They tell you that a narcissist is the most terrifying predator in the psychological wilderness, a relentless machine of manipulation. But what happens when the very person they push to the edge finally snaps? Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today, we are exploring a deeply unsettling reality: why an awakened, fiercely angry empath is infinitely more dangerous than the abuser who created them. Society paints the empath as a perpetual victim, a soft, bleeding heart destined to be a stepping stone for toxic predators. We are conditioned to believe that compassion equals weakness and forgiveness equals submission. But beneath that gentle exterior lies a dormant volcano of pure, unyielding psychological power that the arrogant narcissist completely fails to recognize. The abuser thrives entirely on a carefully constructed illusion of supreme dominance. They select you because your light is blinding, and they assume your inherent goodness makes you incredibly easy to control. They push, they test, and they extract every ounce of your vital energy, completely unaware that they are meticulously loading a weapon designed for their own destruction. You endured the silent treatments, the vicious gaslighting, and the slow, agonizing theft of your sanity. You forgave them when they absolutely did not deserve it, offering a profound grace that they maliciously weaponized against you. But there is a definitive, terrifying limit to human endurance. When an empath finally reaches that absolute breaking point, the rules change entirely. This is not about seeking petty, chaotic revenge or sinking to their pathetic level of abuse. An angry empath does not need to manufacture lies or orchestrate messy smear campaigns to destroy a false reality. Your anger is not a wild, uncontrolled fire. It is a cold, highly calculated laser beam of absolute objective truth that cuts straight through their darkest, deepest delusions. Think of the most terrifying force of nature. It is not the loud, predictable thunderstorm. It is the sudden, catastrophic shift of tectonic plates deep beneath the surface. The narcissist built their entire fragile kingdom directly on top of your profound patience. When that patience violently transforms into righteous fury, the absolute foundation of their reality collapses entirely. They believed they could break your spirit completely, molding you into a permanent, submissive source of narcissistic supply. They severely miscalculated the lethal danger of awakening the dormant warrior residing within a true healer. An empath's rage is born from a profound, deep-seated sense of universal justice, making it a terrifyingly pure, absolutely unstoppable force. We are going to dissect the exact, chronological anatomy of this spectacular psychological power reversal. We will expose the hidden mechanics of how a deeply wounded healer violently morphs into an impenetrable fortress of truth, becoming the ultimate nightmare for a predatory mind. Prepare yourself to witness the breathtaking, undeniable wrath of a fully awakened, angry empath. Are you ready to confront the haunting, spectacular reality of your own immense, untapped power? It is time to step out of the heavy shadows of their historical trauma and look at the clinical, objective reality of your lethal psychological capability. Let us begin the deep dive into exactly why the abuser should be absolutely terrified of the pure, righteous anger they ignited. The dynamic is about to violently flip. The predator is about to become the frantic, terrified prey, completely trapped in a psychological cage of their own making. You are no longer the target. You are the inevitable, crushing consequence of their profound cruelty. Welcome to the terrifying, unspoken reality of what truly happens when a pure heart finally says that enough is enough. To fully understand this epic, inevitable clash, you must first brutally dissect the deeply flawed psychology of the narcissist. They are not the powerful, untouchable masterminds they pretend to be. They are severely fractured, terrified empty shells completely dependent on external emotional validation. They absolutely lack a solid internal core, existing only as a parasite. They meticulously targeted you because you possess the exact vital life force they so desperately lack. Your profound capacity for immense love, deep forgiveness, and radiant warmth was the ultimate feast for their starving, hollow ego. They assumed they could comfortably feed on your beautiful soul indefinitely, slowly draining you until nothing remained but a compliant vessel. But this predatory, absolute reliance on your energy is their ultimate, fatal vulnerability. By attaching themselves so completely to your energetic output, they unknowingly handed you the master key to their entire psychological survival. They are desperately tethered to your authentic reactions. If you suddenly change the emotional frequency, their fake reality begins to violently rot. The abuser's mind is a chaotic, inescapable battleground. They cannot sit alone in an empty room because the deafening silence forcefully demands they confront their immense, agonizing inner void. They are constantly running from a terrifying, hidden monster that lives entirely inside their own broken brain. Their vicious cruelty toward you was merely a pathetic attempt to escape. The narcissist is absolutely, completely terrified of final, undeniable exposure. Deep in their heavily buried, suppressed subconscious, they know they are entirely worthless, empty frauds. The empath inherently possesses a piercing, brilliant intuition that constantly threatens to reveal this dark truth. Your sheer authenticity was blinding their deeply fragile, heavily guarded ego. Notice how their vicious, calculated projection operated during the abuse cycle. Every single failure, deep insecurity, and dark flaw residing in their fractured soul was violently thrown directly onto you. They frantically rewrote history to paint themselves as the tragic, innocent victim. But this desperate, lying narrative requires constant, exhausting maintenance to survive. They suffer from a profound, terrifying psychological numbness known as narcissistic mortification. It is an overwhelming sensation of intense, paralyzing shame and profound emptiness that hits them like an invisible, heavy heart attack of the soul. They realize, with sudden horror, that no manipulation can ever truly fill the agonizing canyon of nothingness residing deep inside them. To furiously combat this crippling, deep emptiness, they engage in highly destructive, impulsive, and chaotic abusive behaviors. They are desperately attempting to shock their entirely deadened nervous system back to life. But every erratic, cruel move only severely accelerates their steep, undeniable downward spiral. They are rapidly drowning in a toxic ocean of their own making. The empath intuitively understands the deepest, most terrifying layers of the abuser's broken mind. You have spent months or years silently observing their pathetic, cyclical patterns of severe dysfunction. You know exactly what triggers their deepest insecurities and what completely shatters their fragile grandiosity. You hold the absolute blueprint to their entire psychological ruin. While they were busy playing shallow, pathetic mind games, you were unknowingly gathering highly classified psychological intelligence. The narcissist arrogantly believed your silence was a clear sign of total, permanent submission. They had absolutely no idea that your quiet observation was actually the meticulous, steady loading of a highly destructive psychological weapon of truth. The dramatic, inescapable turning point arrives the exact moment the empath's deep well of patience violently runs dry. This is not a slow, gentle fading of affection. It is a sudden, absolute, and terrifying psychological snap. The thick, heavy veil of manufactured compassion completely drops, revealing a fiercely cold, entirely unyielding and brutally analytical warrior underneath. The narcissist attempts to provoke a familiar reaction, launching a calculated, cruel attack designed to extract your precious emotional fuel. They expect the usual desperate tears, the frantic explanations, or the easily manipulated anger. But this time, they are met with something infinitely more terrifying, an absolutely chilling, dead-eyed stare of total, unshakable indifference. Your righteous anger does not look like their chaotic, impotent rage. It is perfectly silent, highly controlled, and absolutely terrifying in its precision. The angry empath no longer attempts to gently translate their profound feelings. You begin entirely speaking the cold, hard, unforgiving language of objective, undeniable facts. You completely strip away their protective illusions. When you finally unleash your truth, it is not a messy, emotional outburst. It is a highly surgical, deeply lethal strike directly at the core of their false self. You calmly, methodically articulate every single one of their hidden, pathetic flaws, their profound failures, and their deeply desperate tactics. You hold up an inescapable, brilliantly lit mirror to their dark soul. The sudden realization that you are absolutely no longer afraid of them triggers a massive, highly acute narcissistic injury. Their entire psychological system goes into severe, immediate shock. The omnipotent, powerful God they pretended to be is instantly reduced to a terrified, cornered, and deeply pathetic infant. They are entirely paralyzed by your sudden, unbreakable strength. They violently try to employ their classic manipulative tactics, the intense gaslighting, the frantic guilt trips, the rapid shifting of heavy blame. But your newfound anger acts as an absolute, impenetrable psychological firewall. Their toxic words bounce entirely off your armor. You see completely through the pathetic, transparent mechanics of their desperate, failing manipulations. The empath's anger is so profoundly dangerous because it is entirely rooted in absolute, unshakable justice. You are no longer fighting simply to save a toxic relationship. You are fiercely fighting to entirely reclaim your sovereign soul. This fundamental shift in motivation makes you entirely unstoppable. You have absolutely nothing left to lose, and they have everything to lose. As you firmly establish your ironclad, entirely unyielding boundaries, the abuser realizes their massive, horrific miscalculation. The primary, essential source of their vital narcissistic supply has completely, permanently shut down. The emotional fuel line is violently severed. The sheer panic that ensues within their deeply corrupted, fragmented mind is visceral and consuming. Your anger completely neutralizes their entire arsenal of abuse. They cannot effectively manipulate a person who absolutely does not care about their fake, constructed opinions. They cannot effectively gaslight a mind that has found complete, profound clarity. They cannot emotionally terrorize a soul that has bravely walked through their darkest fire and emerged entirely victorious. The twist of this dark, heavy narrative is finally fully revealed. Their perceived victory during the brutal abuse was the exact, undeniable catalyst for their final, absolute undoing. They blindly pushed a pure empath to the absolute limit, entirely unaware that a fully awakened, fiercely angry empath is the ultimate, unbreakable weapon against a deeply fragile, false narcissistic self. The psychological collapse now aggressively enters its final, darkest, and completely irreversible phase. The narcissist's daily life rapidly becomes a pathetic, deeply agonizing series of profound, unexplainable losses. As you loudly, fearlessly speak your absolute truth, their carefully constructed public mask begins to violently shatter into millions of unrecoverable, jagged pieces. They experience a total, horrifying, and complete fragmentation of the fabricated false self. The fake, arrogant confidence is violently replaced by a crippling, deeply paranoid, and entirely inescapable anxiety. They possess absolutely zero emotional tools to cope with the terrifying reality that they have been completely, entirely exposed by the very person they severely underestimated. Their once calculated rage becomes completely impotent and pathetically messy. They fiercely launch desperate, frantic smear campaigns, aggressively attempting to sabotage you from afar. But the efforts severely lack their former deadly, surgical precision. The vicious attacks are totally transparent, weak, and absolutely reek of desperate, terrifying panic. They are a laughingstock. The angry empath does not even need to actively destroy them. Your mere existence as a thriving, powerful entity does the job perfectly. They are entirely, brutally forced to witness you safely moving on with your beautiful life. The undeniable, radiant glow of your genuine, hard-won healing deeply penetrates their dark, pathetic isolation, completely burning their fragile ego alive. The severe social consequences they inevitably face are brutally, intensely unforgiving. The shallow flying monkeys and weak, easily manipulated enablers who once heavily supported their dark, abusive reign eventually abandon the sinking, miserable ship. The abuser is forcefully made to face the harsh, undeniable truth. Their entire life was built entirely on a foundation of fake lies. They become a permanent, miserable prisoner in the hellish, incredibly dark landscape of their own twisted creation. They cannot ever escape the agonizing, brutal reality that they maliciously destroyed the absolute best, most pure thing they ever had. The heavy, terrifying silence of their lonely, isolated reality rapidly becomes a personalized, inescapable psychological torture chamber. Notice their complete, devastating, and entirely permanent lack of genuine internal peace. A true, resilient empath, even in the deepest, most agonizing anger, can eventually find profound moments of pure stillness and quiet grace. The collapsed narcissist will absolutely never, ever know this comfort. Their internal mental landscape is a perpetually burning, highly toxic wasteland. The physical toll of this massive psychological collapse is deeply horrifying to witness. The constant, agonizing stress of maintaining their completely shattered delusions entirely ravages their body. They begin to look completely hollow, deeply exhausted, and incredibly sickly. The outer shell is finally, accurately reflecting the intensely dark, rotting corruption of their interior. There is a profound, undeniable, and cinematic justice in this horrific, sudden collapse. It is a terrifying, absolute testament to the universal, unbreakable law of emotional gravity. You absolutely cannot constantly exploit the brilliant light of others without eventually burning your own soul entirely alive. The massive emotional debt they accumulated has finally come due in full. The tragic, unavoidable end of the desperate abuser is a chilling spectacle of total self-destruction. They meticulously laid the cruel traps and entirely burned their own bridges, only to heavily realize far too late that they permanently locked themselves inside their own burning psychological prison. The brutal destruction they intended for you became the blueprint for their ruin. You must absolutely, firmly, and permanently stop carrying the heavy burden of their inevitable, deeply tragic destruction. Your righteous anger is a sacred, beautiful protective mechanism, designed to entirely burn away the toxic parasite attached to your soul. Do not waste a single, precious drop of pity on the collapsing, miserable abuser. Their total breakdown is completely natural. Recognize the absolute, unshakable, and completely glorious truth right now. Your anger did not unjustly ruin them. You simply, bravely stopped allowing them to completely ruin your beautiful spirit. By establishing your ironclad boundaries and entirely unleashing your absolute truth, you merely allowed their deeply poisonous nature to finally consume them. You are totally innocent. Your essential, beautiful journey right now is about intense, unapologetic, and fierce emotional reclamation. Every single agonizing tear you shed in the dark was deeply watering the vital seeds of your ultimate, unbreakable psychological armor. The deep pain was horrific, but it forged a magnificent version of you that is completely impervious to dark manipulation. You survived it all. The narcissist's tragic, sudden psychological death is your absolute, undeniable, and completely permanent liberation. As their false, fragile reality violently crumbles to ash, your authentic, beautiful life is finally allowed to spectacularly blossom. The heavy, suffocating, highly toxic fog they forcefully placed over your brilliant mind is lifting permanently. You are entirely free. Do not look back at the horrifying, pathetic wreckage they have finally, undeniably become. The collapsing, deeply desperate abuser wants absolutely nothing more than to violently drag you down into the dark abyss with them. Let them completely thrash in the absolute dark. Let them drown in the terrifying silence of their empty, pathetic souls. You must fiercely protect your deep peace. This profound, secret knowledge is your ultimate, impenetrable, and incredibly glorious shield. By deeply understanding the pathetic, incredibly fragile nature of their severe, hidden pathology, you entirely strip them of all their remaining phantom power. They are absolutely not powerful masterminds. They are deeply broken, severely flawed entities spiraling toward a highly tragic end. Your incredible, beautiful survival is the greatest, most profound rebellion against their severe, highly calculated abuse. They desperately wanted you permanently destroyed, completely silenced, and totally dependent on their false reality. By fiercely choosing to heal, by daring to genuinely thrive, you completely annihilate their entire sinister purpose. Your brilliant joy is justice. The highly toxic, dangerous connection is permanently, utterly, and brilliantly severed. You are absolutely no longer their emotional, psychological punching bag. You are a sovereign, magnificent survivor, glowing brilliantly with a renewed, entirely untouchable light. The deep scars you carry are profound, beautiful battle wounds signifying your massive, undeniable human resilience. As the broken narcissist rapidly fades into total, miserable obscurity, slowly rotting away in the horrifying, locked prison of their own shattered mind, you are just beautifully beginning to rise. The intense contrast is deeply poetic and absolutely, perfectly just. You are safely ascending into a spectacular life of genuine joy, while they sadly choke on their own bitter, dark ashes. You completely survive the absolute psychological slaughter. You bravely unmasked the terrifying monster, fiercely weaponized your righteous anger, and successfully watched their grand illusion burn straight to the ground. They utterly broke themselves trying to maliciously break your spirit. Your brilliant light remains untouched. Walk forward knowing the battle is finally, truly won.